So today I want to show you my process for creating this magical floating product photo, all without the help of Hermione Granger.
Besides, you're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
And we're going to do this right here in my kitchen, very specifically right here. Now, the point of this is to show you how you can do this anywhere with just a little bit of, know-how, how-to. And it's important that you stick around to the end of this video because that's where we're really going to make the magic happen by bringing the photos that we create into Photoshop and really making it look cool. But I've already got all of my supplies here of what we need. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing you need when you're going to do any product photo is a product. And the one we're going to use today is this can of Rogue Honey Kolsch. Now, I did a beer review for this a couple weeks ago. If you saw it, great. If not, I'll link it somewhere. It's delicious. It's basically been my go-to beer since I've had it. But what I really liked about it was this logo here has this bee holding the little honey dipper that's dripping. So I thought we'd do something that kind of creates that similar vibe in a clean product photo type kitchen setting. So that's what I'm going to walk you through here. So my first step is going to have to be to actually clean up my space here. So that's what we're going to go for right now. Real quick note, this is a bakery over here in Doylestown called Bakeability, and they have a really awesome philosophy where they give folks with special needs some jobs. And if you can, I highly recommend you support this organization. Go ahead and order some baked goods. They're delicious and it does good for the world too. So Bakeability, Buckingham, Pennsylvania, check them out. Now, the question might be, why did I choose this specific spot here? And the reason being is I really like the underhead lights that we have under the cabinets here, and they're kind of this warm color. And I'm hoping to use those to my advantage today instead of studio lights. And because this corner here has this wall, it blocks out the sunlight from this side. Now, depending on what the look is that you're trying to go through for a floating product photo, you don't necessarily have to go through the whole process that we're gonna go through here in a minute. Sometimes you just wanna have that cool photo where the can or product is floating between your hands. Now, you can do that just by standing in front of the camera and trying to time the shot so that that can just drops right between your hands and you freeze frame it right in the middle there. I said we're gonna make this can float. This is the product. But what we're actually gonna do here is we're actually gonna make two things float. We're gonna make this can float, and we're also gonna make this honey dipper float. And the idea is gonna be that they both float and drip into a beer glass. So we're gonna set this scene up here. We're gonna put our backdrop up, we're gonna get it all in position, then we're gonna take it over to Photoshop and really make that do the cool stuff here. So the first thing I need to do is, because we're not gonna be able to drop both items and time it and do all of that, we're going to have to do a little bit of craftsmanship here. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna take these sticks here that are really used for kebabs, and we are going to hot glue our can and our dipper to them. I was gonna use tape, but from what we're gonna do here, I didn't think the tape would hold the weight of what we're trying to do. This is obviously an empty can, but we're gonna fill this with honey and have this pouring out. So I didn't think the tape would hold the weight, and B, I'm trying to make my job in editing as easy as possible, and realistically your job, because if you're following along, you're gonna do this too. So If we were to use tape, you would kind of see it sitting around the handle of the dipper, but by hot gluing the stick here, we should be able to easily hide that so that the only thing we're going to have to edit out is what happens after it. So that's the goal here, and that's what we're going to do. Now, one of the things that you need to pay attention to, and this goes for cans, but anything that has a label on it, you want to make sure that you are orienting the item properly. So because the label is facing this way in relation to the opening, we know that we need to put that stick, we need to glue it back here. I'm going to use the facts about the beer line right there. That's what's going to be my guide. And if we tape it there, that should work out pretty perfectly. Hopefully I glued those two things enough now and we don't have to use the hot glue gun. So while they dry right here, what I think we should do is set up the rest of the scene and get everything in position. And I'll show you what we're gonna do right now. I actually like the backsplash of my kitchen, but for the shot that I'm looking for here, I wanted to go with something a little cleaner, a little less noisy. So we're gonna go with this just plain white kind of, I don't know if you call this subway tile, I don't think so, but this plain white tile looking backsplash. Now, everything we're using today is designed to be done as inexpensively as possible because again, I'm trying to show you how you can do this just at home without a lot of money involved. The most expensive thing we're using today is going to be the camera, which you can use a cell phone. If that's all you've got, that's fine. But this is basically just backsplash, that sticker backsplash that I bought off Amazon for, I don't know, 10 bucks and $5 foam core board. Stuck it on that and basically created my own backdrops. Now, you can go ahead and buy nicer backdrops. There's a couple great companies out there. Replica Surfaces is one of them. They make awesome products, but you don't have to spend that money if you don't want to or have the ability to. There's plenty of ways to do things less expensively when you're just starting out, or even if you're seasoned and just don't want to spend that kind of money. I get it. So we're going to put this backsplash up. We're going to use the same counter. I like the counter. And then again, we've got awesome lights underneath here that are going to illuminate the whole scene. So that's what we're going to go with here. All right, so that's where we're going to want everything. I don't know how well you can see that. There we go. We're going to put it right here in the middle. And this way we've got lights on both sides. We're going to do a simple just tape job here because we're going to basically have this just centered, and because of the way that we're going to shoot this, we're not going to see the edges, so the tape that we put in place you're not going to see. All right, so just to show you, this is what it looks like beforehand. It's not going to look pretty. You have to have the mindset of how this is going to look ahead of time to know that it's not going to look perfect right out the gate, especially when you're doing things the manner that we're doing them today. We're not taking ourselves into the studio. We're not doing all of this extra work. And I had to end up moving from here to here because I realized the next step where we're going to mount everything from needs to be done here. I can't do it in the middle there where the bar is. So you can make mistakes pretty quickly. So make sure you're planning things out. Make sure you are looking at what you're doing. So now the next item we're going to do is we're going to actually go ahead and mount to here, and that's where we're going to hang our items from. So what I'm going to use for that is this awesome gadget. This is called Helping Hands, and this is actually a tool used for soldering, that you mount this to a table and then these arms hold the item that you're using. I got this for about 20 bucks off Amazon, and basically specifically for things like this, or to hold things up in the scene of a shoot. We've used it previously to hold up leaves or branches to create kind of a tropical scene or shadows. Today we're going to use it to actually hold up our items. That's why we put those on those kebab sticks. So let's get this mounted and go from there. All right, so we've got our mount here now. We've got 2 arms to hold each item, and we're going to have to plan out now where we're putting our glass for these items to pour into it. So we're gonna take our glass here, bring it in a little closer. Okay, so the glass is gonna go somewhere right around here in the middle of our frame. So I'm putting it there. And then we're going to take that can. Can's going to be on top. So because I want these arms out of the way, I'm just rolling everything up a little bit here. And then we can take that can, take our honey dipper, put that on the helping hands here. And so what we end up with is something that looks like this. Now, we're gonna have to make some adjustments as we go just to make sure it's, in position, make sure things are dripping the way we want it to. We'll probably have to take multiple shots, and that's okay, because a lot of this, no matter how much we plan, is going to require some changes. Now, as far as shooting goes, we're going to do that from right here. So directly across, we're gonna be only about 3 feet away from the shot there. We're gonna use a remote trigger and a fairly quick shutter speed here, but let's get that all into position and we'll go from there. Before we take everything over to Photoshop, the last thing we need to do is take away the items from the setup here. So take away the can and the honey dipper and just take a photo of the backdrop. So that's what we're gonna do. Done. I'm pretty sure we got exactly what we were looking for there. We've got our base layer, we've got our action shot. So let's go ahead and take this over to Lightroom, over to Photoshop and see if we can combine this and make that magical floating product photo. We've got our photos into the computer now.
They're in the computer?
So we're gonna take them over to Photoshop. And what I'm gonna show you here is my way of doing this. I think it's one of the easier ways to do it. It requires some work, but it doesn't require a ton of Photoshop skill. By no means am I a Photoshop expert. So before anybody goes and roasts me in the comments with this way's easier, that way's easier, instead of doing that, why don't you leave instructions on how you would have done it so that everybody can get something out of this instead. But let's get this pulled up here and take a look and really make this photo come to life now. So we've got our 2 photos on our computer now, and we've got Photoshop open. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go over to File, scroll down until you find Scripts, and then load files into Stack. You're gonna go browse and find them wherever you stored them on your computer. Try to make it easy for yourself and put them somewhere you know and know what they're named. Like I did here, I just easily threw them on my desktop and know which 2 they are. From there, make sure we check off Attempt to automatically align source images. Click OK and let Photoshop do the initial work here for you, making your job nice and easy. It'll load both photos in here, one on top of another. And it's going to try to make sure they're lined up properly, which hopefully they're pretty close since we didn't move the camera for the two shots. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use that background image as our base layer, and we're going to use the top image, the bottom image with the can and dipper as our layer that we're going to paint onto the background. So first thing, we're going to click the Create Mask button on that background layer, and then we're going to lower the opacity down to 50-60% so that we can actually see the can and the other stuff from the first image. This is going to help us easily paint it on without doing too much of the other image and just keeping our job of cleaning it up a little bit easier in the long run. So then, because we've got the white layer mask, we want to make sure that the color of our brush is black. We're going to increase the size of our brush here a little bit. Make sure that we can just do this a little bit quicker. The first go around here, we're going to just do a rough brushing on so that we get that can and dipper and glass showing up on the original image, and then we'll go through and fine tune it and clean it up from there. The hardness of our brush is going to be about 50%. We're going to go through and just brush on the spots where the can, the dipper, and the glass are. This can take a little bit of time, so we're just going to speed this up and you'll see each little bit here. Okay, that looks pretty good now, so we're going to raise the opacity back up to 100 so that we just see the parts that are now part of the top image. And that looks pretty good. We obviously did just a rough estimate around the items, so now we can go through and actually paint on, okay, a couple little spots here, sorry, that wanted to touch up here as we go through. It's important to make sure you zoom in so you can see all the parts that you may or may not have missed as you go through. It's better to overdo it a little bit than to underdo it. Like I said, you can always go back and clean it up a little bit more after the fact. Okay, so now we're going to switch back to white, and we're going to actually hide the darker parts here. We want it to have the same color and tones across. So we're going to now fine tune what we just did, kind of going in the reverse direction. So we're going to use that white brush now with a smaller head, and we're just going to go really close along the edges of the cans in the dipper and the glass to make sure that that background image is the base here. And this is where we're really going to be able to hide that little piece of kebab stick on the dipper and the can. Make sure that it all just looks nice and clean. It's important when you do this step to make sure you're zooming in, you're getting really tight to the objects. Most people are not going to notice if there's a tiny little bit, but some will, and this will be part of what helps separate your image from somebody who didn't quite take the time to get really in there and clean this up. So again, this part can take a little bit, so let's speed this up and go through it a little bit quicker here for you. Now, one of the pro tips that I can give you here is, as you go through this, make sure that you are not just holding your mouse down or your trackpad down as you do this and going through the entire thing, because if you do slip and make a mistake, when you go to reverse it, you're going to be reversing a whole lot more than you probably wanted to. So it's important that as you go through this, that you go a little bit, lift the mouse up, go a little bit, lift the mouse up. That's going to be what saves you some aggravation as you go through this process, because that's one of the more frustrating things when you do a lot of really good cleanup work and then accidentally slip and have to undo a lot of it. Now, if you find this video interesting, if you like what you're seeing, now would be a great time as we're cleaning all this up to go hit that subscribe button, click the bell to get notifications when we release new videos. We're constantly adding photography videos, beer reviews, gadget reviews, all things related to what you saw in our intro video. Okay, I think that looks pretty good overall. So from there, I'm going to bring it over to Lightroom. Basically, I prefer to just do my photo editing itself in Lightroom. I just think it's a more intuitive program. I know how powerful Photoshop can be. I just prefer Lightroom. It's what I'm used to. You can use whatever photo editing software you like from this point. Okay, so we've got our photo here in Lightroom now, so this is where we can just really make it look pretty in the way we want. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this down, get our tape out of there, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping the edges, that I'm keeping space on the sides of the cam and the dipper. We want to show that we're not using anything to hold it. We want to create that real magical illusion here. So we're just going to make sure that we have some room on either side of it. And that looks pretty good there. And now we can go through and do a bunch of our edits. I like as much as possible to do more fine-tuned edits, more localized edits, rather than doing the image as a whole. I think it just lends to giving you more power over the image when you do all of it at once. You can kind of lose certain little parts that you may have wanted to retain or adjust differently. So we're going to use a lot of different masks. And Lightroom over the last year has gotten really powerful in its masking capabilities. So we're going to do that for the most part here. All right, so let's go down to the masks here. Lightroom has added the subject mask, the object choose mask, and it's really powerful. So the first one we're going to do is subject, which is going to give our main focal points the highlight. We want to make sure that they're the brightest part of the image. We want the whole thing to be clean looking, but I really want those elements to stand out more than anything else, to really separate them from the background. So I'm going to give it just a teeny tiny little S-curve here, make it a little bit more dramatic in the contrast. Sometimes as you're going through your edits, you know what you want to do, but you also can play around with it a little bit, slide them back and forth and see one way or the other what it looks like. And you might get results that you weren't expecting and are happy with just from toying around a little bit. I always add texture to my elements, sharpness. Like I said, I really want those items to stand out. So that's looking pretty good already. I'm happy with that. But now we're going to really get into the fine-tuning details to really make each thing pop just a little bit more than it was doing before. We're going to go ahead and create another mask. Like I said, the object mask has gotten really strong over the last 6 months or so, however long ago they added it. This has been a great feature. And the can is the star product of this photo, so that's where we're going to focus a lot of our attention here. Again, we already brightened up those other elements. We're going to make sure that we brighten up the can even a little bit more, make it stand out, make it really look clean and bright in this photo. So exposure up, we're going to raise the contrast, drop some of the shadows. I want that can to really look nice, but we don't want to remove all of the shadows, because with the way this is lit, we should see shadows sitting there underneath. Now, depending on what you're doing, it's important not to over edit it. So like I said, make sure that as you're growing in your editing style that you're doing different things little by little. Sometimes go to the extreme and then bring it back down. It's a good rule of thumb to just do what looks good to you. You're probably not the only one in the world who likes the way it looks. So if that's what looks good to you, go with that. I really want that beer in the glass to have that honey colored look. I want it to match the rest of the photo. So we're just going to change that just a slight little bit. Again, I think that's looking pretty good there. This photo is really starting to draw attention, looking really nice. Then the last thing, I want to just make sure that background drops down just a little bit. We want it to be clean. I don't want it to be dark, but I, again, want to make sure that it's separate from the items in the front. So we've got the background, and then we're going to just make sure that the bottom half is not getting changed. So we're just going to add a linear gradient in here so that we're only changing the tiles in the back more so than the marble countertop. I don't want that to get touched in this. It looks pretty good there. Let's go ahead and just make it a little whiter. Drop the color down just a little, not too much. I'm going to keep the background kind of blurred. Yeah, that looks better. I think that has a nice style to it. I think it's looking the way we wanted it to from the beginning, or at least the way I wanted it to. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the way that looks now. I have to just go through and double check everything. We're going to just make one more adjustment here. Just drop the exposure just a hair. Yeah, that's our photo right there. You can see it's looking nice and clean. Definitely looks like it's floating. Yeah, this came out exactly the way we wanted. And again, we did this all in our kitchen. No big studio lights, just our camera and a little bit of knowledge of how to actually do it. Let me know what you think of how this turned out.